Hello everyone and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen Pumpkin Recipe Collection. So what you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make these, and there's such a great taste to these truffles because they kind of remind me of like if you were eating pumpkin pie with chocolate. It's one of those tastes that it's really wicked when you actually taste it and know what that taste is like. I'm using white chocolate, dark chocolate on this. You can use just either one or the other or both. I have shortbread cookies that have nuts in them as my cookie base in this. You could use a different kind of cookie if you wanted to. That's really your choice. And once you pair this all up with the pumpkin and the spices, the cream cheese, and some powdered sugar, you got like such a great taste. So it's one of those things that's really great for fall. It's great for a holiday if you want to do this for Thanksgiving, or you just want to like have these for around the house. They are really great to eat and they're just that good. So we're going to get started making these. You're going to have to crunch up your cookies first, and when you do, you're going to have 1 3/4 cups of crunched up cookies. They don't have to be completely pulverized. You can run these through a food processor, or you can pound them with a mallet, do whatever. You're just really trying to break them up. To this, we are adding 1/3 cup of pumpkin puree. Want to get all of that in there. And then on top of this, we are adding 3 ounces of cream cheese. You want this at room temperature, so that way it's a little bit more spreadable and smooth. And then we're going to start putting in spices. So I'm just going to do these in no particular order. 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/8 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/8 teaspoon of ground allspice. And we're gonna get this all in here and get this going. And once you have in like your 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar and all this, we're just gonna mix this all together. And I like to do this by hand because it just works a lot better for me to do it by hand and push through all of this. And it's just one of those things that, I don't know, I like doing it this way. You probably could use something else to mix it together, but I like to know that as I am pushing this all together, I am getting everything combined and worked. And it's sometimes better that I think if you're doing it with a spoon, you can actually see how much you've got combined and you're not overworking something or underworking it. It's just me, maybe, I don't know. You can do it however you want to. The main goal here is to get this completely combined together and make sure that all of the cookie and all of the cream cheese and everything like that is really pushed into the mix, because we don't want any area where there's streaks of white from the cream cheese or, you know, a bunch of cookie that didn't get mixed in. Because what we're going to do eventually is we're going to roll these into balls with a cookie scoop and put them on a tray to go into the freezer, because they're going to need to be in the freezer for at least an hour to set up before you do anything with the chocolate. So get them completely mixed through. And what I did was I just took like a baking pan and I lined it with some wax paper and just scooped these onto it. One thing you need to remember when you are scooping these out, if your balls are not perfect when you scoop them onto the tray to go to the freezer, it's okay, because when they come out of the freezer, you can kind of roll them a little bit and shape them before you actually start adding the chocolate to them. So keep mixing this up until you get it to the right consistency. And as you can tell with mine, it's really starting to blend together really well. And now if there are little bits of cookie in here that didn't actually crunch down completely, that's okay, because as they sit, it's going to mix together. And there is nuts in this too for mine, because my cookies had nuts in them. So once you get them into your cookie scoop, just go through and just one at a time lay them onto the pan. Make sure that, you know, you get them on there really well. With mine, I try to keep them not overly large. I scooped them to where my cookie scoop was like kind of almost level with itself, but I didn't try to put a whole lot of extra in it, because we don't want these being so jumbo you can't fit it in your mouth. Because remember, when you dip them in the chocolate, they're going to become a little bit larger as it is with that. So, you know, I have like an averagely kind of small cookie scoop here, and I'm just going ahead and doing this. Work this until you get them all scooped in on your pan, and like I said, into the freezer for at least an hour. So that way, you know, you're going to need something like a toothpick or a skewer or something to put into these when you're working them to put them in the chocolate. So you kind of want them to be really hardened before you start working with them, so that way it does stick to your skewer. So these are mine when they came back from the freezer, and I already did a little rolling on them to make sure they were a little bit more even. And my chocolate is set to the side. The chocolate, we are going to take this coconut oil, split it between my two things, or one if you're doing one large thing of it, which basically you're using about 16 ounces of chocolate, so I've got like 8 and 8. And then there's like a little over a tablespoon of coconut oil, which I'm dividing between them. And I'm going to put my chocolate in the microwave and put it in at bursts of like 20 seconds until it starts to melt, and I stir it up. You don't want to overcook this, so you want to do it like until it's actually runny and ready to be used. Then take your skewer, put it inside of your ball, pull it out, and then just dip it in the chocolate, and then tap it a little bit, let it run off before you sit it on your pan. Now, when you go to sit this down, if a little bit of it goes onto the pan and like on your wax paper, it's okay, because later on you can pull this off. And if you have trouble getting these stick out sometimes, it's okay. You can use a finger, you can use a spoon, and then take a little bit of the chocolate on your spoon and just dab it over where the hole was that the skewer or toothpick or whatever was in. And you're going to do this for each one. And then once it's still wet from your chocolate, not dried yet, just take a little bit of the cookie crumble if you have some left and just sprinkle it over top of it. Or you could use like, you know, any kind of candy or something you want to drip on top, because you have like sprinkles and things like that. And then just do this with each one of these, and you know, alternate. If you're using the white chocolate and dark chocolate, you can do one or the other, or you can do both, and just, you know, work your way through them, because you're going to end up with about, I'd say 15-16 truffles out of this. So you're going to have plenty of them if you wanted to do part of them white chocolate, part of them dark chocolate, like a regular chocolate. And then just work your way through until you've done them all. And this isn't going to take a couple minutes to do, but the best thing is once you get it on the skewer and get it down into the chocolate, take your spoon, go around the top of it, make sure the top is completely coated, and then you're just ready to drop off the extra chocolate and put this onto your tray, and then just sprinkle the top, and you're ready to roll. Then these things will start to set up. You might want to set them in your refrigerator. Being there's pumpkin inside, I'd say refrigerate these anyway, just to make sure that they stay reasonable until you can eat them all, so they don't go bad. But this is basically what you're doing here, and this is really not hard to do, but it has such a great taste when you're done. And then you have something really special to share with friends or family or whoever you want to share with. Now, see, I've switched over to my regular chocolate here, and it's just the same process. You just keep going with this until you've got them all done. And the best thing about this is if you do the chocolate and you let it sit up for a second, you know, it's good. It's going to last for quite a while till you get these completely done. And as I said, if you have a little bit of extra chocolate on your wax paper when you're done, once you pop these off, you literally can snap off the extra pieces, and well, you know, you can snack on that chocolate you snapped off as well. Just saying. And you know, these have a great look to them when they're done, because, you know, if you take a little crumble cookie and put on top of it as it's drying, it just has a really neat look. And that's the best thing about it, is it looks like you put some effort into this, which you probably would if you're going to do this. It's not going to be the fastest thing in the world to get done, because it is going to take an hour and something if you count in the freezing time. But people will enjoy these, and that's the best part about it, is sharing something with other people. Just make sure as you go along that you do fill all the tops before you put the sprinkles on top of it. I didn't personally try the sprinkles that you would buy, like the candy kind. I was really happy with the idea of the cookie, but however you want to do this. And the best thing is you can change the outer color of the sprinkles for whatever your holiday or event is to match up, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whatever, if you want to do these. I think the worst part about this is waiting for them to be done so you can try them. So, you know, but once they're done, they are so worth it. And this is what mine looked like when they were completely finished. And these have such a great taste, and they're just perfect for the holidays. So what we're going to start out with is 2 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese, which we are going to put in with our mixer to try and break it up, soften it up before we add any other ingredients. If you have to, you can set your machine on high. I would start out on medium to low just to break it up at first, because sometimes these are kind of difficult to break up and smooth out. This might take a couple minutes for you mixing it before you get it smoothed out enough before you can add the next ingredient, but take your time, because the more you beat this, the better it is. To this, I am adding 2 eggs. And again, I'm going to mix it because I want to make sure the eggs are incorporated into the cream cheese. Make sure with your mixer you're going around from all sides of the bowl to pull in anything that might be stuck to the sides. Sometimes this will stick a lot. You might actually have to get a spatula or something to bring it down. Some cases you can actually just use your mixer and pull it in. It's really not that hard to do, but you don't want to splatter everything all over your kitchen counter. So once you get it to a point to where you think it's starting to look smooth, then we're going to go ahead with our next ingredients. So as you can see with my mix in my bowl, it is actually smoothed out and it looks really creamy. That's how you're going to know you're ready to move on with it. Just to make sure, just look around the sides, make sure that there's nothing stuck to the edges. Try to pull in anything and everything you can get a hold of. And the next thing we're going to add to this is a cup of sugar. Now, I do a whole cup just because I like my cream cheese mixed up with a lot of sugar to make it sweeter. You could use a half a cup, but your cheesecake will not come out as sweet. I suggest you go ahead with the full cup and mix that completely through. You want to get it incorporated in and make sure that everything in the bowl is smooth. Then you are going to add at least a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then keep going with this until it's completely mixed. Now, if you haven't done it already, you probably need to open up a crust for this. I got the graham cracker kind that comes from the store. You have to pop off that plastic seal and have it ready because in a few minutes you're going to actually put the ingredients into it. At this point, you can go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees because when you put this in your oven, it's going to cook for about 45 to 50 minutes. So keep that in mind, but you do want your oven hot before you go putting this in. So this is our crust, and we are going to scoop out the majority of this mix that we just made, except for about a cup, because you're going to need that to mix in with your pumpkin to do the top layer. So go ahead and scoop it out until you think you have about a cup left in there. And smooth it around because you want this to be kind of flattened when you're putting it in. So just take your spoon and move it back and forth until you smooth this out completely. Now with the rest of this mix, you're going to be adding in at least a half a cup of canned pumpkin. And to this, you're going to add some pumpkin spice and then a half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And once you get those in, you're going to want to stir this up until you've got it completely incorporated into your mix. I prefer to do this with a spoon rather than a mixer because it doesn't really take much effort to mix this up. But this way you can make sure you scrape all the sides and get all of the seasoning into the pumpkin and to the cheesecake. And once you get this done, you're going to gently smooth it out and spread it over top of the actual cheesecake layer you put into your crust already. So once you notice that you've gone completely orange on this, then gently put it over top, because the point is you don't want to push it down in, you want it to smooth out and be a complete layer over top. So if you just spoon it on a little at a time, you can actually smooth this around to where it doesn't push down in. So you might have to work this a little bit to go around it and get it all on. And once you get it in place on top of it, it's easy to smooth out. Just don't push down on it. And as you can see, I've got my whole layer covered. And when it comes out of the oven, it will look something like this. Now, if you want to make it a little bit fancy, you could go ahead and cut a stencil to put on top of this to where you could actually use some powdered sugar to put a design. I cut out a pumpkin and I put the wax paper around the edges just to make sure that the powdered sugar doesn't go anywhere I don't want it to. And then it's just a matter of shaking and putting the powder on top. And when it gets done, it looks something like this. And it's kind of cool to have for a meal, especially during the holidays. So everything you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make this. And really, these are so easy to make. If you think about it, just look at the ingredients. There's really not much there. The puff pastry is already made for you. We have some canned pumpkin that's ready to go here. We even have some icing we're already used from a container. So really, this is it right here. There is just not much hard to this. And the best thing is, these taste so amazing once you have them. And for every bag of puff pastry you use, you're going to get 6 of these. So really, you have the equivalent here if you want to make 12. So we're going to use 1 regular size can of pumpkin. Make sure it's real pumpkin and not that mess that they actually act like is pumpkin, but it's just flavored. So we want the real puree stuff. Go ahead and load this into something that you can mix in, because we want to make sure we have room for this. And then we are going to add to this 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Then after that, we're going to add 1/4 cup of sugar. Then we're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. Now you can increase this if you want to. You can decrease a little bit of it. It's just basically pumpkin pie spice. And then we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. And once this is completely in your bowl or whatever you're mixing in, we're going to go ahead and mix this up. Now we really want to make sure this is completely combined together, because we want all of the stuff we just added to this into that pumpkin, and we want it to actually taste just kind of like you're eating a pumpkin pie. We want that really great taste to it. So go ahead and mix this, make sure everything as thorough as you can get it. And then we're going to preheat our ovens to 425 degrees, because these are going to bake for about 18 minutes. So we want to make sure that we totally have that oven hot as can be before these go in there, because we want the pastry to actually puff up really nicely. So keep mixing this up until you feel you've gotten everything combined together. And then we're going to move on to the puff pastry. I got to tell you, the version that I'm using here, if you saw the bag, this stuff is amazing. It works so well. I've never had it fail on me once. So we're going to pull it out of the bag and then roll it out, but we're not going to remove it from the paper yet, because we want to keep it on the paper until we actually get these cut into the sizes we need to actually make the turnovers. So as you can see, this is pretty much easy to spread out, and we're going to use a cookie cutter to actually separate this. So we're going to take it, go long way straight through the center, and that way we've got it cut it one direction. And then you're going to do 2 lines in the other direction to actually make this come into 6 equal parts, or something that looks equal, because, you know, we don't measure this, we just eyeball it. And then once we get them totally cut, we're going to loosen them from the paper just to make sure that they come up, because I've had this before where one of the kinds I had stuck to the paper and it was a bit of a pain to make it do what I wanted it to. So just go ahead and just lift it off and lay it right back down again. And that way we know it's separated, it's easy to move, and it's not going to cause a mess when we try to pick it up later after we put stuff on the inside of this. So now that we have this all done like this, we're going to actually get ready to add some ingredients to this. Now, you're going to go with your pumpkin that we just mixed up. Probably a couple of spoonsful is all you're going to need on each one of these. You try to aim towards the center, kind of towards the corner a little bit, because we want to make sure that when we fold this over, the pumpkin stays inside. So go ahead and just add it too. And one thing I did is I went ahead and added it to each one and then added a little more until I thought it was the exact amount on each one of them. So go ahead and add it in. And just work your way around until you get equal amounts on each one of these. Now the good thing is when this puff pastry is baking up, the stuff is going to smooth out a little bit, move around in it, and it's going to be coating the whole bottom. So once you get to a point where you think that you've got equal amounts in each one of these, we're going to fold these over, and that way we're going to actually use a fork to press the corners and the sides and everything to make sure they stay down. And you know, you could do this with like egg, you know, because a lot of people do egg wash and stuff like that. You know what? The fork works just fine. It just really does, because it always holds it for me. So as you can see, I'm taking one corner, pulling it over, and then I'm just going to press it with my fingers for a second just to actually get the shape right for that triangle, and just work my way through each one of these. And as you can see, there's nothing hard about this. And the best thing is the amount of pumpkin I put in there is going to hold in place, which is perfect. So keep working this until you get through each one of them, and then come back with your fork and just run it along the sides that you folded over. Now, as I said, per pack of the puff pastry, you're going to be able to make 6 of these. And then you already have enough pumpkin for a total of 12. So if you have 2 packs of this, that's fine. But like, with this video, I'm just doing 6 of them right now to show you what they look like. The others I'm going to make off camera. So just take your fork and press it down going along it. Make sure you get all the way to the corners. And just make sure that on the sides that have been folded over, you really push that down and work your way through. And it's really good. Sometimes though it will stick to your fork. You might have to actually hold on to the paper a little bit. This is why I left the paper there, because for one thing, it came with it, and you don't have to clean up much of a mess after you do this because it was already on there to begin with. So go ahead and work your way all through each one of these and make sure that they're really great. And then when they're done, we're going to bring some egg wash in to actually just go over the whole top of this, so it'll get golden brown when it's in the oven. And if you're wondering, in one of the bowls that I had already, all I did basically was take some egg, scramble it like scrambled eggs, and then I'm going to brush it on top because that's just it right there. There's nothing much more to it. So you're going to need a baking pan to put these on once you get these completely run through with the fork. And we're going to just sort of like run some parchment paper over that, so that way it's easy to clean up. And as you can see, this is mine. I'm just going to move them over one at a time until I actually get them in a place where I feel that they're sitting very nicely, because when they puff up, we don't want them running together and actually gluing themselves together. So once this is done like this, once it's on your sheet and you're ready to go here, just take the egg wash and just do a good run over top. And you're going to need something like a brush to brush it on with. They sell these at the dollar store. That's where I got mine from. Just go ahead and get a bunch of it onto your brush and just go all over the top and the sides. And that way you've got a really good coating of this on there. And as you're going through it, you're going to tell the color's going to change a little bit, so you know where you've got that egg at. So you're in really good shape once you get all the way across the top and the sides. And then once we get this done, we're going to sprinkle a little sugar over top of it. And the sugar is just going to give it a little bit of a sweetness, and that's actually a really great thing, because it's just going to help, because even though we're putting icing on top, it's just a little more to the sweetness of it to offset some of the pumpkin. So once you get them completely coated with the egg white, just go in and just take a pinch of sugar and just run over top of each one of them. And then they go in the oven, and they're going to come back looking like this. And see, they poofed up really nicely. They got really great edges to them. They look wonderful. They stayed sealed. That's the best thing. You can't ask for more than that. So now we're going to take our cream cheese icing, get a Ziploc baggie, cut a little corner off, and I do mean a little one, and just spoon in a bunch of the icing, which basically, you see how much I put in there. It's probably about like maybe 4 or 5 tablespoons worth. And then get rid of the icing, squeeze what's in the bag down to the corner. You Ziploc the top of it, so make sure it doesn't come out the other way. And then we're just going to squeeze it over top and let it come out over them, and just zigzag around until you actually get it all over top. And it's that easy. And the best thing is, you don't even need like some kind of a pastry bag or anything like that. You literally just needed a Ziploc baggie. And I'm going to use this until I use up everything I had in the bag. And just, it doesn't matter what kind of design you make on top of it. But, I saw that they had these at Arby's. And I thought, I can make it better at home and cheaper. And I did. And I think mine tastes a lot better. And that's the best thing about it, is when you make stuff homemade, you put a little bit more into it than sometimes a restaurant does that overcharges you. And this is what mine looked like. And when they were done, I swear these were so good. And they were gone within a day's time. So I think you just might like this. So we're going to go ahead and mix up our wet ingredients first. So what you're going to need is 8 ounces of pumpkin puree. And we're going to put this in at least a medium-sized bowl. It's probably going to be a good idea, as your ingredients go in, you're going to need a whisk, so that way you can mix these up properly. Add 2 eggs to this. And to that you're going to add a half a cup of vegetable oil, a 1/3 cup of water, and then we're going to go ahead and throw in 1 1/4 cups of white sugar. And once everything is in your bowl, we're going to mix it up. It's important that you break up your eggs as you're doing this to make sure the yolks are completely mixed through, and go ahead and stir the whole thing up as you're going. Make sure you scrape the sides and everything. This is going to turn very orange very quick. That way you know you're actually mixing everything through. So just keep stirring it until you think that all your ingredients have been pulled up from the bottom and mixed through the whole mixture. It doesn't take too long to get this to the point where you want it. Now in another bowl, we're going to have 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger. Now once you have this all in, mix it around so that way we can get these spices all mixed through your flour. Anytime around now, you need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees so that way it'll be warm when we're ready to put this in. Now once this is completely mixed through, we're going to take the wet mixture and pour into the dry. Now make sure you get everything out of your bowl. If you have to scrape the sides and do whatever, go for it, because we want all of this into the mix. And now take your whisk and mix it all up completely. And make sure that as you're going along you do scrape the sides and we get everything mixed in, because we don't want any extra flour or anything on the bottom when we go to pour this out, because it will end up on top of what you pour it into. Now you could do this with a mixer or whatever. I just prefer to use a whisk because this is not really that hard to mix up. It's pretty quick to mix it all together. Now once you get this completely done, what you're going to need is something like a loaf pan, which is going to be rectangular in shape, and you want to either spray it with cooking spray or use oil and some flour and knock the flour around in it. I found the cooking spray is enough to stop this from sticking when I use like a glass dish. So go ahead and pour everything into this. Now remember, you had this heated up in your oven at 350 and it's going to cook for at least 45 to 50 minutes. And when it comes out, it'll look something like this. Okay, if you haven't heard of it, pumpkin butter is similar to apple butter. You're going to make it in a similar way. It's going to have a lot of the same ingredients, but it's going to be a spreadable pumpkin that you can actually put on toast, rolls, buns, whatever you'd like to eat it on. So to start with, we need 16 ounces of pumpkin puree. You're going to put this into a pot, which probably about medium size. So when you add all the ingredients together, we're going to cook this. To the pumpkin puree, you're going to add a 1/2 cup of apple juice. Mix this together a little bit, get it incorporated so that way it's a good mixture. Now to this, you're going to add 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. Next, you're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. Then 3/4 cup of white sugar. To that, you're going to add 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And finally, you're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. So once you get this all into the pot, you need to mix it through thoroughly. You want to make sure that all of your tastes mix together, especially like getting the sugar through the pumpkin puree, and then all of the spices get mixed in as well. You want to just keep stirring this until you see that everything has incorporated and there's nothing floating on top, nothing that doesn't belong. Scrape your sides, make sure everything is pulled in. You're going to want to heat this on at least medium high and keep it on there as it starts to bubble, because it is going to end up boiling a little bit, because you want to reduce this down. Right now it's really liquidy, but you're going to have to cook it for a while to take that down and get it to a thickness that's like a spreadable thing. So basically you could cook this for up to simmering for about like 30 minutes. So once you get it to a boil, you can reduce the heat a bit, and then for 30 minutes you're going to cook it. You're going to actually stir it as it goes along to make sure that none of it sticks to the bottom of your pan. I covered mine while I was doing this in between, because as it's bubbling it will splash out of your pot. I did have that happen at first and I quickly got a lid. So I would stir it every few minutes just to make sure that, one, it's not sticking, and two, you can monitor the consistency to make sure that you don't have anything getting too thick. Pretty much by the time you get to the end of this, at the 30-minute marker, you should be right on as far as the thickness is concerned, as long as you have it, you know, a gentle simmer the whole time, because it will continue to bubble as you do this. It just won't be a roll, like a rolling high boil where everything is splashing all over the place. You want to kind of keep it simmered, and as you stir, you're going to notice that as you go along it will thicken. Just a reminder, as this is cooking, you're going to need something to put this in when you're done. I actually went to the store and got a jar with a closable lid, because I actually went to the Dollar Tree and they had them there. And depending on how much you're making here, I mean, you could actually double this recipe and make a few jars if you wanted to give these to other people. What I did with mine, I got one large jar and put all of it in one jar, and that's all I needed. But just kind of think about it as you're going along. You're going to have to put this in something, because it's going to go in the refrigerator and chill. You need to leave it in the refrigerator for quite a few hours to cool it down, chill it before you try to eat it or use it, because as it cools it will thicken even more and it'll become more like a paste. And that's what you want it to be. You want it to be thick. Now, as you can see in my pot, mine is just about done because it has thickened up considerably. Now, once it is done, you want to take this to the side, sit somewhere, and let it cool. And when it's done, it looks like what's in the picture right now, spread on bread. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.